don't be fooled by the rating difference because if you look, Voyboy's around 1700 and Spargo's around 1500, but the level, although wait, sorry, it's yeah, no, he is. He's 1753. I'm getting older. I gotta squint to see the numbers nowadays, and they're
No,
off.
but
Okay.
also, Alex, I think the ratings are live updating, right, with the results, so they
Mhm.
truly are different sometimes compared to maybe what we might remember from the start of the event.
Right. So yeah, right now they have a 200 elo point difference, but it feels much closer than that in reality.
Yeah, and the games are the first game is underway. Voyboy starting with the white pieces here and doing something that already is grabbing our attention because I'm guessing that we're going to see pawn going to c3 here. And I say that because Voyboy has elected to not safely recapture the pawn and instead do what we call a gambit in chess, basically offering a pawn. And Alex, I think you can appreciate how dangerous this can get for Spargo.
Yeah, if Spargo ends up taking on c3, Voyboy recaptures with a knight, and he may be down a pawn, but he will have a big developmental advantage. Spargo
Mhm.
says, no thanks, not even going to take your pawn. But now Voyboy has a really big center and is still going to be able to develop. Bishop b4, he's going to have to move his bishop twice, and he's checking the white king, but I was going to say Voyboy could just play knight c3 and develop and block it. Bishop d2 is also fine.
Yeah, this is a perfectly fine move. Voyboy wants to get castled very quickly. Spargo hasn't played what we would call maybe the absolute best continuation here, but it doesn't have to be best moves every single time. I think d6 is solid. It's a little bit passive. White is better, having the full claim to the center. But Spargo is probably going to play the knight out, castle, and at least get a playable middle game position.
Yeah, I think it's so nice when Voyboy is not even new to the game. I would say he's a club player, but getting a big center early on feels so good. But you do have to be a little bit careful because, as we're seeing right now, what Spargo is trying to do is put pressure on the knight. So he's looking towards taking d4, but the computer gives it a double X question mark.
Yeah, it's involved with a kind of long-term tactic here. So I'll just put some moves on the board. If the bishop captures on b4 here, everyone, the knight has to take back. And then you'll see this queen check, which actually forks the knight and the king. You might think that's the end of the line, but no, the knight can safely retreat. But now in comes pawn to d5. That hits the knight, which cannot move due to the pin. So kind of a 2 to 3 move tactic there, Alex, which does 100% win a piece. And it has been played by Voyboy. We have queen a4 on the board. So brushing up on some tactics, some puzzle rush there, Alexandra. That's really impressive to spot that.
Yeah, I'm I know that Voyboy, one of his strengths is being very tricky and tactical, so I'm not that surprised that he found it. I'm curious if Spargo has any kind of counterplay. Obviously, he's not going to be able to get back his full piece, but
Mhm.
maybe he could at least try to break up White's kingside position and get some threats there in the future because we do know Voyboy doesn't like castling. I don't know if you were able to give him that hint yet.
I think there's been a few people in this competition that could all benefit from that very same hint. Some of them are no longer in the competition, have been eliminated, but castling. It's amazing
And
how that escapes some people.
some of them are just hanging out in chat as well. You guys know who you are.
Yeah, that advice is far reaching. It extends to everyone. Spargo is recognizing the situation, knows that there's been a blunder. I'm thinking knight back. Maybe you could bring the other knight over, try to at least claim one of those center pawns in exchange. But this is looking like the absolute best possible start to the match for Voyboy.
Yeah, and he's starting to get ahead on the time. He's up by 2 minutes here. Things are really starting to look his way. I wish we had a Voyboy stream so that we could see, but he pushes it instantly anyway, so we don't even have to take a peek in there.
Yeah, exactly. Knight e7 has been played, and of course, taking makes perfect sense here. And now, after knight takes, you can continue to even add pressure here if you want with the bishop or potentially this knight, but also a very, very safe move could be just knight to d2. It supports the other knight. Yeah, I think really Voyboy wants to keep it safe here. But as I say that, knight d4, he is pressing the initiative, Alex. Another impressive move.
Hmm. Yeah, no, Voyboy's position looks really incredible here, but I do want to remind chat that if you guys remember the first day of Pogchamps, Voyboy was down a full piece against Linda Diaz, and he managed to
Mhm.
save and draw that game. So even though we look at this and we think Voyboy's completely dominating, it's not over yet.
Yeah, but doing such a good job trading pieces here, it actually, if the bishop goes to b5, it'll turn into the exact same position or imbalance from that game you're talking about. It was an extra knight, and yeah, look how many pieces are being traded. This is exactly what you want to do. If you ever get a small advantage, up some pawns, up a piece, even better. Trade everything in sight. If you go 1 for 1 all the way to the end, you're just going to be left with your extra material, and it'll be an easy win.
And remembering some of your advice, if you are down material, you want to create some imbalances on the board, but when you have such few pieces, it's really hard to do that. I guess you can a little bit with the pawn structure, but that's about it.
Yeah, following that advice, it wouldn't be, the most brilliant move, but a couple moves ago, for example, taking with the pawn on c6, it looks bad, but you have to make these decisions when you are down material because look, now maybe you can enjoy an open file. That pawn also comes closer to the center and maybe helps d5 in the future, and you also maintain your bishop. So these are the decisions that you make once you start following that advice of hey, I'm down a piece here. I cannot just be doing 1 for 1 trades.
Yeah, I think that's really good advice. And taking a look at the live game now, it appears that Sparg0 is sacrificing yet another pawn. The pawn on b7 is hanging, and usually you could play a move like rook b8 and recapture on b2, but the
Hmm.
pawn on c is also hanging. Although Voyboy doesn't even need to take it. He says, hey, I'm up a knight. That's enough.
Yep, I think that's a safe decision as long as you bring the pieces to safe squares here. Knight c3, rook d1, maybe even take that time, Alex, and play h3 so that absolutely nothing can possibly go wrong. I feel like Voyboy is looking great in this first game.
I can tell that you've commentated on a lot of sub battles when your recommendation here is H3. You've seen too many things in your time.
Yeah, that's a clearly there are some memories, there's some history there. I can see the visions of back rank mate passing across the screen right now. Please, H3 makes everyone who's a Voyboy supporter happy.
Yeah. What is the rating gap you'd say? Like if you're this rating and under, always push H3 here.
Honestly, I've been embarrassed at some of the ratings that could still use that advice. So to answer your question, I'll maybe say under 1500, but the reality is probably under 2000.
Damn. Okay. Well, chat, that covers 90% of you guys, except when you hive mind, then you're stronger. Sparg0 just played rook fd8. He is trying to hang on to that d6 pawn. And you know what? For now, White doesn't have any other threats, so I think he's doing a good job trying to keep it together.
Hmm. Yep, there's a clear target here because of the pawn in the middle. It's very difficult for black to advance the d pawn. So this is usually the point where you can start to make use of your extra material. As white, doubling the rooks on the d file is an easy target. Black is probably forced to do the same. And then you can take your extra piece, the knight, and just think to yourself, how can I maneuver that piece to attack the pawn? Because the one thing white can do that black can never match in this game is attack something more times than it can ever be defended.
Yeah, and another option for Voyboy is he could try and just trade off the queen, something like queen d4. But if he does, Sparg0 can always just reject it, move his queen over. So he can't actually force trades without continuing to
Yeah.
put pressure. H5, okay. I think he heard you saying h6 and he got a little creative with it.
Well, here's why this move is absolutely incorrect here. This move is going to prompt Voyboy's sensors to remind himself to play h3. So this is a terrible move from black because now Voyboy's thinking, okay, you're going to play a move like that. Now I'm reminded to play a move like that too. So you want to be careful. Don't help your opponent out there. It's a great idea for black, but you're kind of handing the great idea over to white as well.
Yes, chat will never forget that lesson. And Voyboy does try to go for the queen trade here. Sparg0 should certainly not take. He needs to keep his queen on the board. Queen g6. Okay, now his h5 move is looking at least it holds, a tiny bit of venom. He has the
Yep.
h4, h3 idea. And when you are down a piece, hey, your plan might not be correct, but it's the best you've got.
Exactly. And this would be so good if it happened. But again, after h4, Voyboy is going to be summoned to play the move h3. So let's wait and see if that pawn keeps advancing. Because I do like the fact that Sparg0, he's always creating, not just sitting back and saying, okay, I'm down material. I guess we lose. No, he's thinking of stuff to do. He's making an escape square, even has some attacking ideas. He knows to decline that queen trade. So all in all, you're down a piece. You're probably destined to lose if Voyboy just plays a perfect game. But best you can do is keep making good moves and hope for a mistake.
Yep, and the one other thing Sparg0 does need to do at some point, if you look at Voyboy, all of his pieces are active, but Sparg0 still has his rook on a8 that hasn't been activated, so maybe he's going to need to move the rook from d8 either somewhere like d7. He moves it to e8, which is not a bad idea because now he could bring his rook to d8 and both rooks are active.
I love that. Yeah, right as you mentioned it, probably his brain was thinking the exact same thing, that I have this rook that I need to activate, sliding it over to e8. Now, the reality is this move probably has to be considered a little bit of a mistake because of the
Mhm.
move queen g3. It hits the queen, offering another trade, and if you want to decline it as you've just done, oops, now that pawn is attacked again, and you don't have time to get that rook over unless you trade queens.
Yeah, and here it would be worse to give up the pawn to just trade queen. So he's gonna have to go for that. And Voyboy is slowly getting it done one trade at a time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is a really good move by Voyboy. Basically, the conversion has been pretty flawless so far. All the pieces in the center, controlling the center, looking for trades at pretty much every juncture, and targeting the weaknesses in the position. So, uh, we've been talking a lot about what to do maybe if you're on the worst side of the position, but it's equally difficult, Alex, to convert and win those winning positions that we all get sometimes. You're up material. I mean, it does not result in a win all the time, but Voyboy is showing exactly how to do it.
Chat, what percentage of games would you win if you were white against someone you're rating here? I'm curious how high or how low it might end up being. Okay, we see the queen trade. He didn't really have a choice. Somebody is saying 100%. I think you're a little too confident. 90, 80, 50 question mark. I'm seeing a few 50s. Okay, not a lot of faith in yourself.
Well, it's simple,
80,
Alex. You
75.
either win the game or you don't win the game. It's 50
No,
50.
but percentage of games over time, if you had to play them 100 times.
Mm-hmm.
I just expected it to be higher, like 90 plus.
So the interesting thing about this, like being up a piece, being down a piece, is most players, and this is a paradox in chess, and it's not really a fair one, but when you're down a piece, you disproportionately feel like you're going to lose the game, and when you're up a piece, you disproportionately feel like it's still tricky or like you still have some work to do. And people resign games when they're down pieces far too often, not realizing that that would be amazing. If you were up a piece and your opponent just resigned, you'd be like, oh, sweet. I wasn't too sure about how I was going to win that, but thanks a lot. So people definitely resign and give up their positions, whereas they aren't, having the greatest technique themselves. So kind of a weird paradox the way we feel about positions.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. I also tend to play a lot worse when I'm in a better position because I get overconfident and I just assume it's going to be easy. So I'm not trying as hard. Versus when I'm down a piece, I'm like, I'm going to come back. I'm going to swindle. My motivation is at 100%.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, basically you have nothing to lose at that point. Like it could only go up from here. And I guess the other good thing that Voyboy has done throughout our chatter here is just stay up on the clock. The worst thing you can do when you have an extra piece is to also let that time tick down. You're stressing how to convert. So we haven't seen any of that. Voyboy really will only lose this game with a huge, huge blunder. Like would have to just drop the knight on a terrible square or something. For now, looks solid. And Alex, I'm waiting for the rooks to double on that weakness. And I'm waiting for this knight to just reposition to attack. For example, rook d1, knight here, threatening knight f4, as well as knight d4 and knight f5, and you cannot defend this pawn enough times.
Yeah, Spargo's plan here makes sense. He's trying to double defend the pawn on d6, but if white repositions his knight, he is in trouble, and the rooks are really awkward because to continue protecting the pawn on d6, they only have an additional 2 squares to go to. But if he had put his rook on d8, then the 2 rooks would have been doubled, and ideas like e5 could have pinned the pawn on d6. So I like that
Mhm.
Spargo is trying to bring his king in. It's important for the endgame and also to bring another defender to the d6 pawn. But his rooks are going to be in a really awkward position if they start getting attacked. And knight e2, wow, Voyboy doesn't miss.
Yeah, this is a really, really good move. This is a massive threat right here, but there's an equally tough move to face, knight d4. And both of these moves are going to win a rook for a knight in some way, and the result will be Voyboy up not just a knight, but now it's going to be a full rook.
Yep. And Spargo under 2 minutes on the clock. It's starting to look like it's not even savable anymore. Before, at least there was some hope. But now, if he's down a rook as well. Although you're
Yeah.
not supposed to say that as a commentator. Everybody has a chance, chat. Anybody can do it. Stay tuned. Whoa, comeback incoming.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. For everyone that answered, less than 100%, this is the moment right here where we get to witness the 8%, the 9% happening.
Yeah. I mean, there's still a chance. I don't know if you guys have seen Dumb and Dumber, but there's still a chance.
So the move rook h1 is like switching targets, and actually the follow-up g4 is quite nice to make use of that pin against the rook, because if we play this move and black takes it, obviously trading that final rook, this is the ultimate goal when you're up material, because there's that extra rook we're talking about. It's not two rooks versus one, it's one versus zero, which is the best you can do.
Yeah. Even if you're giving a little bit of material back, if you can simplify and get the trades done, it will make your life so much easier. And I think that's a really good educational point to mention here. And you could continue it even after h4 with a move like g3
Yeah.
or g5. I guess doesn't really do the same thing, but it'll get there.
It will. Probably going to be supported by the move f4. And then even this rook can swing over to h3, which would take the pawn on h4. The concern now for Spargo is that the rook, if the rook takes on h4, has nowhere to go. That's a forced trade. So I would almost start running for the hills, go all the way back, and just try to, escape with my rook. This move also accomplishes the same idea.
There is a little trick though. If Voyboy hastily plays g4, Spargo can play h takes g3 on pasta, check, and he can save the rook with king g2, but maybe he misses it.
Ooh, and that happens to be, I mean, obviously blundering the piece was a big mistake from Spargo, but not taking with the pawn there and losing not just one, but now two pawns is going to be quite costly here.
It's looking bad, Amon. I
Yeah, we
don't know
might be
what else
close to
to tell you.
100% here, especially with 7 minutes, right? It's not even, if times were flipped, at least there would be a little bit of clock pressure. But I think appreciating the situation on the board, on the clock, Spargo decides to resign. I think a pretty fair resignation, Alex, and Voyboy wins game number one.
Yeah, no, that seems really fair. He fought it out as much as he could until the position was opened up.